Welcome to our section on food illusions. Let's start with these two solid circles. They're both the same size. Now, these same circles, which one do you think looks larger? Almost everyone will say the one on the right. So this one has a small distance between this outer circle, and this has a larger distance. So once that distance is larger from the outer circle, we perceive that the inside solid circle is smaller. So how can we apply this? Which one do you think looks like more? Most people are going to say this one on the right. And the one on the left looks like a smaller portion of food because our brain is kind of tricking us into thinking that this one is larger and this one is smaller. Same thing here. The salad looks larger on this plate compared to the salad on the larger plate. So as we think about applications of this theory, think about, well, if I want to eat more salad and trick myself into thinking there's less, because I don't really like salad, maybe that's what someone's thinking, then use the larger plate. The exact opposite might happen in this scenario. Well, maybe I don't want to eat as much pasta, so I'm going to put it on a smaller plate. So does this actually play out in the real world? real world. This study actually showed images to a group of participants, and this is the same size of macaroni, but look, this plate has a rim, the same size plate, but it just has a rim. Almost everyone perceived that when there was a bigger rim, there was going to be more food. And here's the graph from the study. This is a really large rimmed plate, a little bit smaller, it goes all the way down to no rim. This is the probability that there's more food than a standard when they were compared to just the standard image. So if they looked at a plate and said there was more food, and this is the amount of food. So this right here, they just wanted to see if the amount of food mattered, and it actually does. As you have a smaller serving size, there's not a great difference between what people perceive to be different sizes. When you have larger server size, not as great of a difference. But look at these standard size. There's a pretty big difference in between the various plate sizes. This is a half-inch rim, 3/8 inch rim, and you can see these are the white and gray blocks here. So we can see in almost every single instance that people perceived that there was more food on the plate compared to the same amount of food on kind of their standard plate. And with the no rim plate and the small rim plates, we can see that in almost every instance, people thought there was less food. Now, we do have a study that does show when they really looked at larger plate size and energy consumption, because we're looking at portion size, what we serve ourselves, it's a little bit different when we start thinking about health outcomes and the energy consumption. What they found that when they looked at plate size and energy consumption is that there definitely was a difference. People tended to consume more energy with the larger plates. However, it was marginal. So there's still a lot of room for the research to grow in this area. All right, so let's move on to the horizontal vertical illusion. Which line do you think looks larger? So most people would say the vertical line. And let's look at this slide. They're exactly the same size. However, this line looks longer. So how do we apply this in real life? Well, these hold the same volume. This is taller. Most people think it's going to hold more fluid. This looks shorter. Most people think it's going to hold less fluid. And let's just kind of test this out. This is a glass of fluid. It looks like a pretty small amount, but if you put it into the taller, more narrow glass, it has to be tall and narrow, and hold the same amount of volume, it looks a lot more than when it's in the smaller glass. So what is the natural compensation, do you think? Well, the theory, again, this is theory, is that when we see a short, wide glass, we're going to think we're getting less. So we're going to pour more and potentially drink more. Same thing when we have this. So we perceive that we're getting more in the taller, more narrow glass. but in actuality, it might be the same amount as a shorter, wider glass. But our brain is telling us, oh no, if I have the shorter one, I have less, so I need to, pour more or drink more. We don't have a lot of research to back this up. There is a study that's in the British Medical Journal, and it's by Dr. Brian Wansink. However, as I mentioned in the notes, he has manipulated data on some of his studies. So he actually is not, some of the studies that he has done, the research has been retracted. The British Medical Journal has not retracted this study. However, and he found exactly that people tended to pour more into a shorter, wider glass in his study. However, we have to just be a little bit skeptical about his research because of his ethical, his conduct, his unethical conduct. So we're just going to test this out ourselves in the discussion forum, and you can decide for yourself. One last little mention here is some contrasting colors and how they might impact intake. In the study I mentioned in the notes, a group of participants were given white, red, or black plates. And they went to a buffet, and on their first run of the buffet, their amounts were measured, and they were eating red pasta. So a pasta with red sauce. So what they found is that the black and the red plates, almost everyone served themselves more than if they had a white plate. Okay, so why might this be? When you look at this bottom here, what does it look like? The spaghetti here is the same as the spaghetti over here. However, it looks like there's more because there's a contrast between the background the background and also the plate. And if you look over here on the right there, it kind of blends together. And this is just an illustration of the concept. In this image, if the colors are the same, it might be easier to just load up on more food. I mean, this is the theory, because you're not really seeing what your serving size is. And what I did is they didn't test this, but I thought, well, what if you're having an Alfredo and maybe you have a white plate or a beige plate? How does that look? And again, when we look at this left image here, when we have more contrast, it looks like there is more food on it. So, which means we're likely going to serve less. Okay, well, that's going to be it for illusions. One thing I want you to keep in mind is a lot of these studies have been looking at portion size, not necessarily what we consume or the outcomes. I just find this area of research is pretty fascinating because it might be just these small, subtle, simple ways that we can trick our brains into maybe eating less of one thing or more of something else that we want to eat. So we'll look at applying this in the discussion this week.